5. So this will be a Category 4 at the time of landfall, most likely, not a 5. Camille was a 5 in 1969. That is the Gulf Coast hurricane of record. But we've not had a 4 to strike the Florida Panhandle on record, and weather records go back to the late 1800s. And again, what we want to do during this coverage, we're going to do our best to show a lot of video coming from the coast. We don't want you looking at our faces here. We want you to see what's actually happening down there. And understand, because of the extreme conditions, it's going to be hard to get a lot of quality video. Conditions are as bad as they will get now with the actual eye wall, which is the worst part of that storm on shore. So again, this will be one that will go down in history. And again, right now the pressure is sitting at 919 millibars. The sustained winds are at 150 miles an hour. And again, these observations don't necessarily tell the big story. You're going to have a lot of places in between these observation points where the wind is much more severe at this point. And again, we're watching.
This is more wind gusts here. So you're looking at 70 down there in Apalachicola, but we know it's more than that for sure.
Right. And again, one of the things that's interesting to me, Charles, is the fact that the Weather Service in Tallahassee issued for the first time in their office history an extreme wind warning. And that is a new advisory from the National Weather Service that is used in cases like this. This is for Gulf, Bay, and Franklin counties where the eye wall is coming on shore. The Weather Service, in the text of this extreme wind warning, extreme winds in excess of 130 miles an hour with the eye wall of Michael on shore. This is a dangerous and life-threatening situation. Take cover now. Treat these imminent extreme winds as if a tornado is approaching and move immediately to the safe room in your shelter. Take action now to protect your life. What the Weather Service in Tallahassee is basically doing, they've got this big extreme wind warning advising people within that, in the eye wall area, to act as if this were a significant tornado coming in. They're telling people to be in a small room on the lowest floor near the center, away from windows. And that's the first time that office has issued one of these extreme wind warnings. That has not been in the toolkit of the Weather Service for years, but they believed it was a good product to come out with for a situation just like this, and certainly we believe in that. We should also mention there's a tornado watch in effect for parts of North Florida in South Georgia. And I do want to talk about the inland impact as we go along here. Let me just say up front, Charles, we don't expect any tornadoes in Alabama. On the track that Michael is taking, the eye wall will come in now. The eye in the center, as it moves inland, will be staying basically in this track right in through here. And remember, the main chance of a tornado is going to be along and to the right of that circulation center, which means that South Georgia, North Florida, this is where the tornado threat will be. We don't expect any tornado problems here. However, we should mention we do have a hurricane warning in effect down here for extreme southeast Alabama. Dale, Henry, Geneva, and Houston counties in the southeastern part of the state. That's where winds could possibly gust to hurricane force at 75 miles an hour. I don't think we'll see sustained winds like that. Again, the higher winds will likely be in Georgia and North Florida. This thing is just skirting the southeastern part of Alabama.
And I believe we've got a reporter down in Dothan. You know, you and I are just kind of taking over, so we're learning about who we've got down there. But
right.
I think we've got Alex Durant's down there. So we'll get some reports from him, I guess, as the time goes on.
Right, and that is the largest city in the state to be impacted by this. And obviously, if you're in the northern half of the state, if you're watching us on television in Birmingham or Anniston or Tuscaloosa or Gadsden or Cullman or Clanton, it's cloudy. We have a few showers around, but there's very minimal impact on our end of the state. We thought we'd stay with this because people in our end of the state have so much interest. Many people own property. Many people have emotional ties. They've been vacationing down here for years and years and years. And based on the historic nature of this, now that we have a high-end Category 4, we thought the best thing to do would just be to stay with the coverage this afternoon and kind of watch developments as they come in. So again, we're at 12:07. We're just starting this, and we're going to stay with you throughout the afternoon. So join us, and we're going to keep you informed as to what's going on here. And again, some of the images we're starting to see coming in, Charles, it's almost hard to see. Again, we know what this camera is, by any chance, the camera we're seeing in the other box?
Was that Port St. Lucie? That was where it was. Is that Bradenton Beach? Okay.
Oh, that's down near, goodness, that's a pretty far piece away from the circulation center. Again, you know, we've got a lot of situations where these cameras are going down. The power is going down. And that's one thing that will be a major problem down here. Power could be out for days and days. if not for over 1 week in spots, and not only on the coast, but also inland.
Yeah, well, James, this was from the National Hurricane Center in Apalachicola. They reported over 6.5 feet of inundation above ground level at their water level station in Apalachicola. So that's the storm surge that we're talking about. 6.5 feet so far.
Right, and one of the things I was doing, I was listening to some of the local media outlets in Panama City Beach coming back. Again, I spoke at East Elementary up in Coleman, and listening to them, and you know, there's some fear. I mean, these folks have never been through anything like this, and it's easy for us to say from a distance, well, don't be afraid. Understand, if you're down here in the middle of this thing, if you're close to this eye wall, you will have fear. If nothing else, the noise alone is deafening, and it goes on for a long time. Now, the one positive, this thing is moving. It's not going to sit there. This is not going to be a Florence. This is not going to be a Harvey, where it sits for days and rains 50 inches. This is going to fly out of here. A very deep upper trough is picking it up and moving it out. And again, y'all say this is Port St. Lucie. Is that right, this other camera? Okay, that's way down in the south eastern part of Florida. That's north of West Palm Beach. I don't know if we can get a camera closer to the actual hurricane. That is hundreds and hundreds of miles away. And again,
yeah, I'm wondering if they meant Port St. Joe.
Okay.
They might have said Port, yeah.
Now, if it's Port St. Joe, that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
And again, I'm just trying, for my reference sake, I'm trying to see what we're looking at over here. Port St. Lucie, again, I would imagine it's probably mostly sunny down there at this point, down in the southern end of Florida. So again, here we go. If you're just joining us, this is the eye wall that is on shore. And Charles, if you can stop that loop and let's zoom into this thing just a little bit here. Let me just kind of show you where we are. This is coming in right at Mexico Beach. Okay, so we're going to stop the animation and zoom in. There we go. So Mexico Beach sitting right here, and Panama City Beach is up here, just up the road a little bit, and that is the eye wall. That's the eye. The eye is where you look up and you see blue sky and you see sunshine and there's no wind. That's great, but the eye wall is the worst part of the storm. And yeah, that's Port St. Joe.
Port St. Joe, yeah.
I was about to say, Port St. Lucie should be a sunny day. So again, this is the worst part of this thing that's coming in right now. And again, let's stop this thing one more time. I want to show you the great concern here. And while it's bad, I mean, they're going to see winds over here that could gust to 120, 130, 140 miles an hour in Panama City and Panama City Beach. Again, Panama City is here. Panama City Beach is right here. There could be structural damage from the wind alone here. The big problem, it's going to be over here. Just torrents and torrents of water coming in, walls of water being pushed on shore. This is the storm surge, and inundation levels could be up to 13 feet, Charles, and you might want to correct me. They might have revised that upward.
I think it was 14 to 15 was the last time I saw earlier today.
So we might have a 15-foot storm surge in this zone right here. And again, this is just a marvelous, marvelous part of Florida down here. If you've never been, if you go from Mexico Beach down here to Port St. Joe, which is basically a fishing village.
Right.
But now there's a lot of marvelous restaurants. You know, my favorite restaurant in downtown Port St. Joe, it's Joe Mama's Pizza, Charles. If you ever go to Port St. Joe, go to Joe Mama's.
I'll get it.
And the villages and the shops and the restaurants, it is just a marvelous place. So Port St. Joe is here. And again, this is Cape Sandblas. And that is just stunning, the beauty in here. And I'm afraid you can just see what's going on here. They are in that onshore, I would imagine most of that island, Cape Sandblas, is underwater.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll find out later, but I would imagine the damage is severe. And then from the Cape, you keep going down to Indian Pass, and then if you keep going past Indian Pass, you wind up at Apalachicola. And again, that is an old-style fishing village. But at Indian Pass, the Indian Pass Raw Bar, Charles, you ever been to that one?
I've been through there. I've never stopped.
It's fantastic. I was there in August, and for a lot of folks, it is a vacation destination. It's something they look forward to, and I'm afraid we won't recognize it when we see the images coming in after this. So that's what's taking the brunt of this thing, Mexico Beach. And really, You know, this eye is going to come in almost at Tyndall Air Force Base. Tyndall Air Force Base is just a little to the southeast of Panama City itself. Tyndall Air Force Base here, Mexico Beach is right here. But this tremendous, tremendous storm surge damage, and again, we might have a 15-foot storm surge here, is coming up through the Cape San Blas, Mexico Beach, Port St. Joe, Indian Pass. It just doesn't look good. Now, I want to work our way back to the west because we're getting all these questions, and I want to try and answer these questions for you. So let's talk about Destin and Fort Walton Beach. They're on the offshore flow side. Here we've got north winds, so we don't have this wall of water coming on shore. Everything's going offshore, so there's not going to be any storm surge damage in through here. But the winds on that side of the hurricane could gust up to hurricane force at Destin and Fort Walton Beach, perhaps. They might see winds of 75 miles an hour. There could be some structural damage there, but I don't think it's going to be widespread. Will be some power outages there, but I don't think you're going to see severe damage at Destin and Fort Walton Beach. And of course, as you keep working your way back off to the west, Navarre Beach, Pensacola Beach, they're fine. In fact, it's barely raining at Pensacola. It's not raining over here at Fort Morgan, Dauphin Island, Orange Beach, and Gulf Shores. It's not raining a drop over here. And so I just wanted to kind of give you that coastal tour to let you know that we have no issues. The National Shrimp Festival, Charles, is this weekend.
Yep.
One of the greatest. I mean, if you've never been, it is a marvelous time to go to the coast and enjoy that event. The weather will be gorgeous. The event is on. There will be no damage. There will be no problems. Sunny days, fair nights, absolutely gorgeous. So the Alabama coast not involved in this. Pensacola, Navarre, a little wind and rain from this, but the issue, again, in terms of the severe damage, the kind of catastrophic damage that you might see from a high-end Category 4 hurricane, it's going to be from Panama City, Tyndall Air Force Base, Mexico Beach, down to Cape San Blas, Port St. Joe, and Indian Pass. And again, that's you know, a lot of folks maybe aren't familiar with that. You know, they don't have the big high-rise condominiums and the big hotels and everything else. It's not as built up as what you see in a Gulf Shores or a Destin. But again, it's a marvelous place, and I'm afraid the damage will be just very, very severe. And again, in terms of history, this is not a Camille. Camille was a Category 5 in 1969. That is the Gulf Coast hurricane of record. This is an upper end 4, but by golly, it's close. And this, understand, this is stronger at the time of landfall than Opal in 1995. And, you know, we almost killed Bill Castle in Opal. Remember that? Charles, you weren't with me back then.
I wasn't here, but I've heard the
we
stories.
sent him down there too late. But I've been with Bill for a long time. But Opal was so destructive. And that was a 3 at the time of landfall. Think about Ivan in 2004. Yeah. Ivan was a Category 3 at the time of landfall. We're talking at the time of landfall. You go back to Eloise. This was one in 1975 in Fort Walton Beach. I was in Fort Walton Beach during Eloise, and it was horrifying, but that was a 3. It wasn't a 4. So going back to recorded history in terms of weather data, going back to the late 1800s, this is the first Category 4 that's hit what we define as the Florida Panhandle at the time of landfall. So this will go down in the books as certainly one that will be remembered for a long, long time.
And I think, James, you should reiterate that it's, you know, it's not just Category 4. It's a high-end 4. It's not that far off from being a Category 5 storm. So it's not like it's just barely a 4. It's a high-end 4.
Right, and we get hung up in these numbers. You know, it just sometimes you don't need to get hung up in the numbers. We just need to understand this is a very, very dangerous storm here. And so that's the situation now. I want to talk about inland impacts, Charles. If you can talk about that for just a minute over there. People are asking, the next question is, Dothan in southeast Alabama, what can we expect in that part of the state?
Well, for us, the big thing, let's find it on here, which kind of show you the maps. We'll start out, of course, the tornado watch moving inland. There's no tornado watch for Alabama, but there is the hurricane warnings, meaning folks in Dothan will see the hurricane force winds. Probably you guys see 100-mile-an-hour winds, maybe a little higher as this moves inland. The immediate threat, though, is going to be, of course, in the Panhandle, Panama City, Mexico Beach, to Weehawken, and Northeast. It will affect Tallahassee. But for the southeast corner of the state, I do expect to see at least a few trees down. That's not going to be out of the question. You've got to deal with that. You've got to deal with the heavy rainfall as well. So some flooding not out of the question. Anywhere, and I know it's under the banner up here, but you've got I-85, I-65 in that southeast quadrant of the state. you guys might be dealing with some power outages for some time. Of course, the further north you go, as you get up past Troy, I don't think it's going to be quite as bad, but that's going to be the primary concern for us. If you've got interest over Dauphin Island, Mobile, Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, you're actually doing just fine. So that's going to be okay for the folks there. And you just excuse me for digging. I got to find the stuff on here, but it's, you know, we look at these wind speeds that are showing up, and they're not terribly impressive on this information. Now remember, we've got an 81-mile-an-hour sustained wind showing up at Panama City Beach, 72 in Apalachicola. Now these are gusts, but again, higher wind speeds, of course, within that. And then, of course, the storm surge. Now there's no way the storm surge presses as far north as, say, Dothan, but we've already seen reports of 6 to 7 feet over here on this side of the point. You get down towards Port St. Joe, Apalachicola on this side, and this probably needs to be updated, but 8 to 15 feet is not out of the question. I mean, as the storm has grown, every time it grows in strength, and even just a few miles an hour, we've got to bump those numbers up. So I would say 13, 14, 15 feet of storm surge, not out of the question. Many of those barrier islands out here are underwater. And put that in perspective, if you don't vacation over here, you don't know what, think about going over to Miramar Beach and those areas. And you get over on that side near Pensacola, and you've got some of those barrier islands there that maybe you hang out at, or you go to the beach. Those would be underwater. Now, of course, the condos would be fine, but those first levels would basically be sitting in the water. If you parked underground on some of those condominium structures, your car would be underwater for sure. So that's what they're dealing with for the most part. Again, for us and the impact for the southeast quadrant of the state, it's not going to be terribly bad. I want to zoom in so you can kind of see some of the towns here. I know a lot of folks have, you know, you got kids that maybe go to school in South Georgia. So, taking a closer look, you've got Albany, Georgia, right here is probably the biggest town or city, if you want to call it that there. And then you get over towards Tifton. But in South Georgia, they've got that tornado watch ready to go. And what's going to happen is the track of the storm. You get that northeastern track of the storm. And as it moves through, anything on the right half side of that track will be the primary risk for tornadic activity. Of course, you got Valdosta over here, Valdosta, big school down there, and then of course Albany, and then back over towards Dothan. Notice that Dothan, though, is on the west side of that track, so typically the winds will be a little less impactful there, but on the right half side of the storm, we'll definitely still be feeling it. Even as it moves into southwest Georgia, the outer bands will be affecting parts of the state, and we could still see winds near 100 miles an hour, especially those wind gusts. So again, interest in southeast parts of the state as you get down from Dothan. I would say even a little bit further north of there, maybe up to Eufaula, you'll be dealing with winds of gusts of excess of 100 miles an hour. So trees down, power outages, and we're talking maybe a couple of days as well. The primary concern will be to get into Florida along the Gulf Coast and get power and emergency services restored there as fast as possible. The other problems that we'll be dealing with is that first responders, once the wind speeds get above 50 miles an hour, for safety reasons, they do not go out, and that'll be another issue. Listen, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to reset things a little bit. We'll be right back with more continuing coverage of Hurricane Michael right after this.
Live team coverage throughout Alabama.
Let's go down to Dothan at ABC 30 through 40's Alex Durrence. Alex, what kind of conditions are you seeing there?
Well, Sarah and Wendell, the rain has slacked off, but the wind is starting to pick up. We're told that those hurricane-force winds could be are expected to come in later today. The tropical storm-force winds are expected at any time. And right now, we're at a filling station for the city of Dothan, and we've seen since the time we've been here, numerous police cars have been coming in, filling up. Other city vehicles have been coming in and filling up, preparing to help those who may be in need today. And that's one of the biggest things. One of the biggest words here is prepared. EMA officials are urging folks that they should have already been prepared for Hurricane Michael to be coming in. We're told they're telling they are advising people to be ready to be self-sufficient for 72 hours because of this storm. And another thing they are wanting people to do is be prepared to be patient. The power outages are expected to be long and widespread, so if you do have a power outage, just be patient. They're going to be working to do as much as they can and to do it as safely as they can. And like I said, right now, it is just, like I said, it's just afternoon. So what we are told is that there has been a curfew enacted for the Dothan, Houston County area, and this curfew is being put in place just for people's safety. And we're going to be staying here live here in Dothan. We're going to continue to bring you the latest as we get there, guys.
Alex, can I ask you a question? What time is that curfew there in Houston County in Dothan?
Wendell, that curfew is already in effect right now, and there are some other parts of this area, other parts of other counties and other parts of the area that will be enacting curfews later on in the day. But the curfew for Dothan and Houston County started at noon today.
All right, Alex Durant's reporting live in Houston County. Alex, thank you. Also, we want to mention Governor Kay Ivey tweeted just a little while ago that Alabama is opening up shelters to anybody in Florida who needs them. We know many people have been coming into the area as far north as Jefferson and Shelby counties to try to find shelter.
So let's get straight to the Weather Authority. Chief Meteorologist James Spann for where the storm is right now. James.
All right, so we are at a point where we're almost at landfall now. The eye wall moved onto the coast about 30 minutes ago, and for those folks down here at Tyndall Air Force Base, they are about to get into a very bizarre situation. They've been through just Hades, horrible, hellish weather, and everything stops. The wind stops, the rain stops, you can look up and you can see blue sky. And that is coming on here right around Tyndall Air Force Base. And again, Panama City, the city itself is here. Panama City Beach is right here. So again, that's coming over the Air Force Base. And the great concern, as we talked about, and understand, there's going to be a lot of structural damage here in Panama City. This is a upper N4 with sustained winds of 150 miles an hour. They're getting it over here. But at least the flow is offshore, so there's no big storm surge problems. The storm surge issues are over here. So we'll have structural damage here in Panama City, yes. But over here, again, from the Air Force Base down to Mexico Beach, Cape San Blas, Port St. Joe, it will be just absolutely horrific. This is going to be the second most intense hurricane to strike the Gulf Coast on record. The only other storm on the Gulf Coast stronger than this was Hurricane Camille in 1969. And if there's any good thing here, this is moving along at a good clip. There's a deep upper trough that's pushing this rapidly onto the northeast. And again, we have video coming in on the other side. And understand this camera, I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, this is from Port St. Joe. And I don't know exactly where that camera is located, but again, we have access to some other cameras and some other video streams. But understand, for a lot of these folks, we hope that they just stop. At some point, it's not worth it. You always take some risk, I guess, in covering weather. But in a situation like this, you just stop. You don't do it. You go to a safe place. Life is more precious than getting riveting video of a Category 4 hurricane coming in. And a lot of the folks that are down there, the chasers and those that cover these that are experienced, they have gone to a safe place. So we don't have access to those streams. They don't have streams. And quite frankly, we don't want streams. Once it's safe for them to get back out, we'll be able to do that. That is one of the automated cameras down there. But again, basically this thing is making landfall right now. And I do want to show some images that will be on, let's see, let's put this on WEX 05, and give me a second here. Monroe or Vic or who's back there? Who do we have more? Who's our director back here today? Monroe Walton. What a great American. So let's take WEX 05. I wanted to show you what this thing looks like. This is from the International Space Station. And they have done they've come over Hurricane Michael, and that's what this thing looked like this morning. And check this out. I mean, the shots of the eye are incredible. You're looking at the Gulf of Mexico. And within the eye, you've got these mesovortices that can enhance the wind damage that rotate around the eye wall. But again, that's what it looked like. I think that shot was taken about 2 hours ago, back when it was over water. And again, that thing is sitting on the coast right now. So let's go back to our double box. And again, the center, it's going to take a while to spin down. And where's this shot coming from? If you guys could just kind of let me know in my ear, that would be very helpful. And if we don't know, we don't know. But I'll tell you, that is not Panama City, and that is not Port St. Joe.
That's definitely not.
That might be
calm.
Might be Honolulu or something there. We don't know. But again, as soon as we find out, we'll let you know. But again, right in through here, North Florida, up into southwestern Georgia, places like Thomasville, Bainbridge, Tifton, Valdosta, even as far north as Macon up in through here, they're going to be taking the brunt of this right in through here. This is where this eye will be tracking, and it's going to, of course, slowly weaken. But understand, for a 4, it's not just going to weaken like that. It's going to take a long time to spin down. So we could see winds of 100 miles per hour up and through here. Thankfully, Alabama, there's the center line right here. And notice that the center line stays out of Alabama. Alabama stays on that good side. Now, still, if you're in Dothan, if you are in Abbeville or Ozark or Geneva, you're going to see very strong winds, and you could see down trees and power lines. You'll see a lot of rain. But the worst impact will be over here on the east side through parts of North Florida and southwestern Georgia. Still, we have 4 counties in southeast Alabama under a hurricane warning. The other counties in the shades of maroon here. This is a tropical storm warning. Tropical storm force winds about 40 miles per hour or higher. So for places like Greenville, Luverne, Troy, Eufaula, Andalusia, Opp, Evergreen, Atmore, they might see winds of 40, 45 miles an hour today, but we don't expect any tree or power line damage there. And then once you work your way to Montgomery and points north, there's just not that much going on. I mean, we'll see a little light rain. Had about, 8 drops out there, Charles, coming in
about it
earlier today, and it's just not that windy. So, that's the good thing. And again, it's funny, Charles, last night people were just getting all upset. For some reason, and I don't know where it came from. Everybody says, it's not turning. Well, this was never expected to turn. Is it supposed to turn right? No, if it turned right, it would come over here to Tampa Bay. It was a gentle veer to the northeast, which is exactly what happened. The Hurricane Center could not have performed better. An exemplary job of forecasting this storm. But for some reason, people over here were saying it's going to come up to Mobile and come up to, no, it's not. Alabama's Gulf Coast is on the good side, and we are blessed because of that. So again, this is the track inland. It should weaken to a tropical storm near Augusta, Georgia, and then come up through South Carolina, dumping rain where they certainly don't need it. This is the folks hit so hard by Florence, but again, it's going to be racing northeast and accelerating in advance of that trough. So that's the good news. And again, we'll get this thing out of here fairly soon. But the reason we're here, we just thought the best thing to do is to stay with you while this thing moves inland. And because you're watching history here. This is one hurricane that will be talked about for generations. Okay, so now in the other box, let's take that full screen if we can. The one thing we're going to try and do during this is give you some live video. This is coming from Panama City. And let's just emphasize here that they're very fortunate that the eye of Michael is coming in east of their city because they're on the good side. Now, good, Charles, is a relative term. Right. Let's be sure we make that perfectly clear.
They're still getting, 100-plus mile-an-hour winds.
Horrible weather conditions. But in terms of the storm surge damage, they're not going to deal with that. They're going to deal with structural damage from the core wind field with Michael. Panama City Beach. They're going to see a lot of trees down. They're going to see some structural damage. They're going to see a lot of power outages. They're going to have a lot of flooding issues there. But if this thing would have come in a little to the west of Panama City, it'd be a whole different story. It would be much, much more severe. So the really highest impact in terms of damage is going to be from roughly the Air Force Base, Tyndall Air Force Base, right down the line.
I tell you what, James, this is Panama City, but if you were to look, Tyndall's right in here. Tyndall's right down here. They probably got blue sky right now. Just the contrast of about 7 miles difference. The eye wall itself is about 15 miles across. The Air Force Base right in here, and they're getting hammered in Panama City with winds and heavy rain, and they're probably seeing blue sky right now for probably another 30, 45 minutes as that eye wall continues to move on shore. They're in the eye, and they're in the calm of the storm right now. Then they've got to go through the second half as it begins to move back, the back side of that eye wall. So that's just an amazing contrast from what you're seeing really on this side of the screen, and you're seeing that in Panama City. But again, they're probably sitting there in blue skies right now. They evacuated the Air Force Base. They got all those planes out of there. They were talking about that this morning. They've got them repositioned, restationed elsewhere to keep the planes and the equipment safe. So It's amazing how fast they can move those guys out of there when they need to. But again, the eye wall itself is about 15 miles across, so you're looking at Panama City about 7, maybe 8 miles away from the Air Force Base, and it's just a contrast of what you're seeing there. We can take that back full screen right now. They're getting some good wind gusts there.
In fact, if we can take WEX 05 for just a minute, I want to show some more video coming in from Panama City. And again, look, you can see trees have snapped there. And again, this was captured here within the last 15 to 30 minutes, right at Panama City Beach. Or, I'm sorry, Panama City, not Panama City Beach. And that's pretty rough. Again, I don't know exactly how fast the winds are blowing in that scene there, but they're probably coming at a good 60, 65 miles per hour. Maybe not quite at hurricane force, but you can clearly see a lot of the trees have snapped, and there's clearly going to be a lot of wind damage in through here. So kind of re-rack that one more time. This is from a Montgomery Advertiser reporter that is down in that zone. So again, that's what it looks like in Panama City right now.
All right.
Let's go to some more video that we've got now coming from Panama City Beach. You guys back in the back can roll that. Okay, this was taken about 1 hour ago.
Look at that storm surge coming up.
Right, and again, they're on the good side.
Right, right.
I'm telling you, it looks bad, but you don't know how bad it could be if they were on that bad east side. They're on the better west side of the circulation center. And again, this is actually on the beach. And, you know, the big problem is going to be down to the south and east of there. We've got a report of a wind gust now, Charles, at Tyndall Air Force Base in the eye wall when that came through about 15 minutes ago, 129 miles an hour.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, and this is, again, some of the live video coming in. Bradenton Beach is...
That's over, that's really on the,
right,
on the central Florida.
That's below...
like
that's
Clearwater
below
and St. Pete.
Right, that's below St. Petersburg. That's
Right.
that's not close to the center of the hurricane here. They're just kind of catching the outer fringe of this. All right, and this is some more video coming in. Bradenton Beach is that's down there between Sarasota and St. Petersburg.
Yeah, they're getting
again,
an outer
for those
band.
back in the back, what we're going to try and do is focus on the shots within the landfall zone of the hurricane. If we can do that, that would help us. Right, and again, that we know that is from Panama City, and that is a fixed camera. They're under some type of awning there, and they are in that western part of the eye wall, Charles. It looks like the western part is right over Panama City.
Yeah, and they've got a good strong band of very heavy rain. Something I noticed, though, and you don't have to split screen it, I can just kind of talk about it, but they're actually getting quite a bit more lightning than I would normally see. It's right around that eye wall, but you're starting to see some lightning strikes from Weewahitchka back over through Panama City, and that's, you know, typically we don't get a lot of lightning with those storms, with the tropical systems, but it does happen. But can you imagine, it's like almost insult to injury. Here comes the wind, the rain, the storm surge, and Mother Nature's going to throw some extra lightning out there at you to make it sound even more horrifying as this is crossing overhead. Again, heavy rain, winds in excess of 100 miles an hour easily, wind gust even higher, and of course the storm surge coming on shore. Mexico Beach to Port St. Joe is probably underwater right now. We had a report earlier of Apalachicola, which is on the other side of the point. You can see Carabel and East Point, Sop Choppy, those areas got just inundated, and those barrier islands most likely are underwater. So just know that. We got a report of about a 6.5-foot surge earlier, and that was just lifting up and just coming in and on shore. So put that in perspective, I'm 6'2", so it's about 3 to 4 inches over my head as far as the water levels go, already coming on shore. So just be mindful of that. And again, these first responders can't go out. They've got rules and safety rules that winds in excess of 50 mile an hour sustained winds, they don't go out. It's a safety reason. They've got families too. They've got to stay put until those winds begin to die down, and then they can begin to go on out and look for folks. And this is that Panama City Beach, Panama City Beach, right? Is it beach or is it city? Okay, it is city, Panama City.
I want to take WEX 05, if we can do that. Our friend Ginger Z of ABC News is in Mexico Beach, and she is in a motel, and this is just horrifying. She is in the worst possible zone of impact from this thing, and she is, again, they're trying to get a shot out that door of this hotel in Mexico Beach. Mexico Beach is...
That's it. That's
this is
ground
basic-
zero.
Right. This is where the worst of the conditions will be, and we can't hear what she's saying here. We'll see if we can rack this up back in the back where we can actually hear the audio, but what she's saying is that she's experienced a lot. For those that don't know, Ginger of Good Morning America worked with us here at ABC 3340. She was an intern in the summer of 2000, so she's one of ours, and she's been through a lot since the summer of 2000, since she was here, and she says this is the worst one she's ever experienced, and I can understand that. In fact, you've got it kind of circled on the graphic.
Yeah, let's split screen that if we can, and I'll show you where she is. She's in that right half eye wall, which is the worst place to be at the moment. And she didn't even get the break from the eye, James. She stayed in that band the whole time.
Yeah, the red circle represents where Ginger is currently located. And again, you guys back in the back, if there is a special report from ABC News, please let me know. We want to take that because they will take Ginger's video. And I don't exactly know when that report ran, but again, if ABC comes up with a special report, we'd love to take that because Ginger is right down in Mexico Beach, and I think it's pretty remarkable that they're getting video out of there. They're getting, I'm sure they're using one of these live view units using cellular data, but oftentimes in a situation like this, even the cellular data doesn't work.
I'm surprised they have power. Be honest with you.
Let's go back to WEX 05, and we have an agreement with Live Storm Chasing. This is Brett Adair, and this is a stream from Port St. Joe.
Wow.
And this is within the eye wall of Michael. And again, we understand that his car is literally floating away based on the reports we're seeing. They abandoned the vehicle and climbed a house to safety about 15 minutes ago. Again, this is part of the partners that we have with Sinclair Broadcasting. Brett is from Alabama. He is from Sylacauga, Alabama. And he has been working these type extreme events for quite a while. So again, that's pretty horrifying stuff, Charles. I mean, it's just absolutely
I think that's
horrifying.
on a loop, but yeah, I think it gets underwater there at the last bit. And they haven't even had a break in Port St. Joe. They didn't get that eye wall break, that few minutes. They're on that right half side of the storm. Hopefully he's really kind of been able to move inland some, but again, that's terrifying to be there. And remember, this is he's not on those barrier islands. He's actually right there on the coast, and they're getting that much water.
Okay. And I tell you, we've got ABC up. What we want to do is let's go right to ABC and let's see if we can get Ginger through their special report. We'll come back to our coverage in a matter of minutes. Let's go to ABC.
From ABC 3340, this is a Weather Authority alert.
It's 1 o'clock. I'm James Spann back in the Weather Center. We thought we'd take ABC for a little bit and that they had the resources on the coast to tell the story what's happening down there. We're going to stay with you this afternoon to let you know about the damage on the Gulf Coast and the impact on southeast Alabama. But this is an historic storm. This will be second to Hurricane Camille in terms of a landfalling hurricane on the Gulf Coast. In terms of history, Camille was deeper. Camille was a Category 5. This storm, Michael, a Category 4, a strong upper end 4 at the time of landfall. The maximum sustained winds during the landfall, 155 miles per hour. Landfall has occurred near Tyndall Air Force Base between Panama City Beach and Mexico Beach. And you can see the back edge of the eye wall is about to wrap right back onto the Gulf Coast. So for those people that had the break, and it's eerie, you're in the eye of this thing, you look up, you see blue sky. There's no wind and there's no rain. Everything stops after hours of this horrific roar. Everything stops, and then all of a sudden it picks right back up again, back on the backside of this thing, and sometimes the backside is worse than that front side. But Panama City is over here in the western edge of the eye wall. They have been in that now for hours, and again, the scenes we have seen out of there, you've been watching that from the ABC crews, it's been pretty tough. Ginger Z is down here in Mexico Beach. She has been on the eastern edge of the eye wall. And understand, it's bad all in that eye wall. It's bad. You'll have structural damage around the entire eye wall. But you'll see storm surge damage over here. This is where we have this tremendous onshore flow coming on here. And this is where the storm surge damage will be so bad. Ginger did send out a tweet recently saying that she is safe. She's not able to broadcast anymore. Want to take some video coming off WEX 05. And again, this is off the ABC coverage. And if we can take that, this is what it looked like at their hotel. Watch what happens here. I mean, you could literally see the building, a huge structure falls into that lobby. And that's why this is so dangerous. And there's a lot of debate online now about should people be out in this covering this this story. And, you know, that's a journalist question. We do weather. Our background is science and engineering. But, again, what it does, it lets people know that maybe the next time we have a hurricane like this, they won't stay back. They won't, you know, ignore the evacuation orders. And we know that some people did. So let's come back to the graphics and let's talk about Alabama. You heard on ABC a second ago that the storm is coming through Alabama. It's not. The track will be missing Alabama to the east, but we will have some impact in Alabama in the southeastern corner of the state. So let's put on the track. And again, you can see that this is expected to be tonight a Category 2 that's just northeast of Dothan with 100-mile-per-hour winds. And again, over here, you can see this is the Alabama-Georgia state line. This is the Florida line. That's the Chattahoochee River right here. Dothan is here. This is Houston County. This is Geneva County. And the Hurricane Center has done a stunningly good job in forecasting this, remarkably good. And on this track, remember, the worst impact will be along and to the right of that red line. There will be wind, there will be rain in southeast Alabama. There's no doubt about that. We could see winds gusting to maybe 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. And technically, there is a hurricane warning for the southeastern tip of the state. But the main impact, it's going to be over here in South Georgia, North Florida. Places like Thomasville, Bainbridge, Valdosta, Tifton, maybe up to Macon. And we should point out here the areas in yellow, that is a tornado watch in effect for that area through 5 o'clock Eastern time today. That will probably be extended. I've not heard of any tornado activity so far in this thing. But for Alabama, the main effect in the southeastern tip of the state, Dothan, Geneva, Ozark, Abbeville. You could see winds that are possibly gusting as high as 40, 50, maybe 60 miles an hour. The counties up and through here, this is a tropical storm warning, and that's 40-mile-per-hour winds or higher. So there could be some gusts of 40 for places like Andalusia, Opp, Greenville, Luverne, Troy, Union Springs, Eufaula, Phoenix City. And we should mention this does not include Auburn, Opelika. A lot of people asking questions about Auburn University, and they have kids there. They need to evacuate. No, they don't. There are no watches. There are no warnings. And yes, it's going to be kind of breezy and kind of wet here today, but nothing really dangerous. And that's the same thing for this whole Interstate 85 corridor from Montgomery back over to Tuskegee, Auburn, Opelika. So yes, windy and breezy today, but nothing dangerous. And of course, as you work your way up here, it's quiet. I mean, it's barely raining. It's not that windy. Everything is fine on the northern end of the state. So again, we are here for the impact down south. Again, here's the radar. And again, you can see the leading edge of the more widespread rain moving up to Birmingham from the south and east. We have mostly light rain falling in places like Clanton, Sylacauga, Alexander City, over to Roanoke. And again, that's going to be kind of the edge of this. It's not going to rain much at all, really, for Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, Fayette, Demopolis, Utah, Reform, Hamilton, places like that. You might not see enough rain to measure today. Birmingham, I'd say probably less than 1/4 of an inch. The better totals down here to the south, places like Rockford, Sylacauga, Alexander City, Ashland, Lineville. But even down and through here, there's nothing dangerous. There was a lot of really bad information circulating last night on social media for some reason about these horrific winds. And somebody showed me a screen grab of some weather app that said the winds were going to be 90 miles an hour in Clay County. Charles?
It's not going to be 90 miles an hour in Clay County unless you're driving on the interstate.
Right, we have a word for those apps, and we won't use that here, but there's just a lot of bad weather information floating around. It's great having the phones, and it's marvelous having the convenience, but a lot of this stuff is just not good information. So for those watching us on TV, and now this new world, people are watching us in Honolulu and Moscow right now because we're in the digital world. But for those watching on traditional television within our television market, no severe weather, no tornadoes, no flooding. And the next question is, why are you here? So many people have property down here, emotional interest. They go down here. There's so much interest in this. We think that this is all that people are talking about. We wanted to simply give you a live update as this thing moves inland. So, Charles, it's in.
Yeah, it's in. Still some very heavy rain. That's the amazing part. Still going to be dealing with a lot of damage, wind damage especially on this east side, Weewha-Hitchcock up to Bluntstown. And I actually started working in television down here in Panama City Beach. And so I know that this gets very sparsely populated in spots through here. But then you get from Weewha-Hitchcock to Bluntstown, Greensboro. But then even over towards Tallahassee, you're going to have quite a bit of heavy rain and some wind. and they're going to be dealing with that. And then you get into Panama City Beach. They're dealing with this very, very heavy band of rain on the west side of the track. And then, of course, something we don't usually see a lot of lightning in with this storm. We've been monitoring that as well. But just horrific conditions. Imagine just a constant, not even a howl, but just low grumbling roar coming through at a constant 20, 30, 45 minutes of heavy wind, and then it starts to lighten up just a little bit, and that's what they're dealing with. And the winds in excess of 100 miles an hour, I want to say 155 was the maximum sustained wind. So this was just shy of being a Category 5 storm. The pressure down to about 919, one of the lowest pressures we've ever seen. And again, we'll monitor that, but it's going to start to weaken now. Wind speeds should start to weaken now that it's over land. It's going to be a slow process. The Hurricane Center, this is the official track. You've still got a Category 2 status as this crosses from the Panhandle into southwest Georgia. Even tropical storm strength still as it gets closer to Augusta a little later in the day up into the Carolinas. They're going to be dealing with a lot of very heavy rainfall, a place that just doesn't need that rainfall. They've had so much flooding from hurricanes earlier this year. But again, this will maintain at least hurricane status all the way into Georgia, probably across the I-75 corridor. And that's going to be an issue, at least for them, especially trees down, power outages, not even out of the question for the folks here in southeastern parts of the state, especially the Dothan area, but we'll be dealing with the widespread power outages across the Panhandle and through southern parts of Georgia, no doubt, even all the way over towards Valdosta. So if you've got family, you've got kids who are over here in Valdosta, just know that they are under that tornado watch. We could see some quick spin-up tornadoes. As James likes to say, we call it whack-a-mole. In a tropical system like this, they pop up, weak tornadoes can develop, and then they're gone just like that. We got a live look at Panama City. Let's go ahead and let's just take that full screen. That's more compelling than looking at me. Do we know where in Panama City? I think that's which bridge that is for sure. But you can see, yeah, definitely the wind's just really rocking and rolling down there. The heavy rainfall has been just immense. We know of a few reports of storm surge in excess of 6 feet on the east side of that track of the storm. So no doubt some of those barrier islands are underwater. To put that in perspective, I'm 6'2", so we've got water above my head in many spots just pushing on shore. The storm surge is immense. And it's difficult to tell here how windy it really truly is. You can see they're probably sheltered just a little bit, and we can't see some of the trees there. You see the flag on the left-hand side of your screen, and you kind of get an idea about how windy it really is. My goodness. Oh, wow. Just, our thoughts and prayers are with the folks down there in Panama City. Pam?
My mic is hot. Yeah, just as we continue to look at that, just wanted to tell you a little bit. They're concerned about 50 people who resisted evacuating St. George Island, and two people are on a little island called Dog Island. That island is only accessible by boat. They too ignored the evacuation order, so they're very concerned about those people. We can tell you that Governor Rick Scott in Florida has 1,000 search and rescue personnel ready to deploy just as soon as they can. And obviously, James and Charles, they've got to wait until this passes before they can get out.
Typically 50-mile-an-hour winds or greater, and they don't go out.
Right.
First responders will not go out because of the safety factor that's involved. It's more risky for them to go out and risking more lives because somebody didn't heed the warnings and evacuate. So we've got to wait, and that's going to be a long time before the winds drop below 50 miles an hour.
And a few moments ago, you all were talking about Tyndall Air Force Base. We have a graphic made. I don't know if we can put that up or not, but obviously so many of us go down to this area as tourists, but we can't also forget what goes on down there as far as our Air Force and our Navy is concerned. Florida's Tyndall Air Force Base evacuated, obviously. They took all of the aircraft to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, so that's where that is. Hurlburt Field, they evacuated all aircraft there to Little Rock, Arkansas. And the Naval Air Station at Pensacola has decided it is closed through at least today, possibly tomorrow, just depending on what happens. And as you look at what is happening there right now, so many of us have been there, have walked those beaches, and we can't even imagine the damage that is going to happen. Here we go. We are looking at the graphic there right now. You see where the Naval Air Station is, and of course, the further west we go, keep me posted here, Charles, if I'm correct, the further west we go, the less severe we're going to see. But you've got Hobart Field, and then you've got Tyndall Air Force Base, and they were so wise to get all of the people out of there. They were allowed one piece of luggage, and they transported all of them off the base just as soon as they could.
Yeah, and that was, they reacted, I think, quickly to that, and that was very wise. I know just I would say billions of dollars worth of equipment, aircraft that they get out of there, it's home to the Angels down there.
Absolutely.
And so they got those guys out of there as well and their families, and I know that the good thing, and I really like this about the military, you didn't have an option to leave. They told you to get out.
Get out.
That was the number one thing. A lot of folks, I'm in contact with a friend now, and her husband stayed behind to ride it out in Panama City. Even my urging him to leave, he stayed, and she just let me know that she's in contact with him and he's fine. But he said it's unbelievable the sound that has been over their house. So
let's go to Wexo 5 for just a minute. I got some video. This is coming from Mexico Beach, and again, not quite sure the circumstances of why somebody's there. And obviously, this is not immediately on the water. But again, I would probably not want to be that close to that window. But this was taken about 30 minutes ago. And Ginger Z, our former colleague here and now with ABC News and Good Morning America, she is in Mexico Beach. And again, this is really ground zero. I'd say out of all the places, that's probably where the worst impact is going to be. From Mexico Beach down to Cape San Blas, Port St. Joe, Indian Pass, Apalachicola. And that's where this video is from. I'll leave this up for just a second. This is the way it looks down on the Alabama Gulf Coast. The waves are huge down there, obviously, on the Alabama Gulf Coast. But again, Alabama, if you look, you almost see some patches of blue sky there. It's not even raining at Gulf Shores. The waves are way up. But again, Alabama's Gulf Coast is going to be just fine. Let's go back to the graphics behind me here for just a second. I want to show a few more images in just a second on Wexo 5 that are coming in. We're going to be in a phase now where we're going to be shifting from covering the landfall of this to showing you some of the damage images that have been coming in. And again, the communication is always going to be spotty in through here, very spotty. But let's go back to Wexo 5. And again, this is some of the damage that you're seeing. This is from Panama City Beach, Florida. And remember, they're on that quote unquote good side. Be structural damage because the winds over there are obviously in excess of 100 miles an hour. And that's an example of what's happening over there. Had a couple of other images wanted to show real quick. This is from Jim Eds. Jim is in Panama City Beach, and that is a structure that is right on the beach. Jim is a longtime hurricane chaser, if you will, and a friend of our show, Weather Brains, and we'll be seeing a lot of images like that. But that's what it looks like in Panama City Beach right now. The images are rather limited. Yeah, let's take another live shot now coming from Panama City Beach. And of course, when we say Panama City Beach, understand these are two separate communities. Panama City is, okay, this is Panama City, so this is inland.
Listen to that.
But say, look, you don't know how bad that is unless you've been in one of these things. You know, Pam, we worked Hurricane Frederick in 1979. And I was in Mobile, and that was my second hurricane. The first was Eloise in 75, but that noise, it's deafening. And we actually had a few folks that couldn't handle the noise, and I can understand that. They just couldn't handle it. And there's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide, you can't get away from it.
It's a constant, it doesn't stop.
Christopher Sine and Bill Castle of our staff here, they were trapped in Hurricane Ivan. On the beach in a structure where they dealt with it all night. Let me just mention one thing for the weather folks that are looking for weather data. the National Weather Service in Tallahassee reports they have lost communication with their radar. It's down. They don't know what's happened to it. They don't know. We just don't know. Maybe the radome is gone. There could be major damage. Maybe it's some type of generator failure. We just don't know. But again, the National Weather Service in Tallahassee has lost communication with their radar. They're asking users to use Eglin Air Force Base radar and the Florida Panhandle and Fort Rucker in southeast Alabama as alternatives.
And that's what we're using. I'm surprised. The Eglin radar is actually closer to the center of circulation than the Tallahassee radar, which is it's amazing that it hasn't gone down yet. But we hope that it doesn't. But it is probably less than 50 miles. In fact, I can kind of measure that out. It's about 30 miles from the center of the storm, whereas Tallahassee is closer to about 60 miles from the center of the storm. So half the distance, and Eglin is still up and running.
Let's go back to WEXO 5 for just 1 second. I wanted to show another bit of video here. This is coming from Destin. So many people are asking questions about Destin. This is Destin Miramar Beach, and this is overlooking Choctawhatchee Bay. And that's what it looks like. And understand that as you keep going in that direction, the damage will not be as bad. There will be some damage in Destin and Fort Walton Beach and Miramar Beach, but again, that's farther away from the core winds within the middle of this thing. But obviously, it's a rough ride. And over there, that is an offshore flow. But of course, on the bay, you're still going to have some flooding with that. So that's what it looks like there. All right, let's go to Okaloosa Island. And this is going to be some live video here. This is coming from the crab trap. Charles, you've been to the crab trap?
I've heard of it.
I have not.
Never been there.
I have not been to Okaloosa Island in a long time. I used to go faithfully back when I was much younger, but I have not been in a long time. But again, this is what it looks like on Okaloosa Island. And again, we stress as you watch these images, this is what is well to the west of the landfall point of Michael. The landfall point was near Tyndall Air Force Base between Mexico Beach and Panama City Beach. This is about probably 60, 70 miles west of there.
Yeah, it's closer to Fort Walton.
Right. So, Fort Walton Beach, that's Okaloosa Island and through there. And again, obviously the surf is very rough, but so let's kind of give you a reset here. That's the eye. Panama City is right here. Panama City Beach is right here. Port St. Joe, Cape San Blas is right here. This is Mexico Beach. This thing came in right about here. Again, Mexico Beach, Panama City Beach, Tyndall Air Force Base. The center, the eye came right over the Air Force Base. There was a point where they could just look up and they could see blue sky. There was no wind at all. Now they're catching the back edge of the eye wall. But the one good thing here, it's moving. It's trucking along. This will not stop. The synoptic weather conditions will push this thing out quickly. It's the same trough that's going to bring this remarkably cool air in here later this week. We're going to be in the 40s Friday morning. That's going to be a shock for this late summer weather that we've been having in through here. And again, what are these little things here, Charles? What you got
That's
here?
lightning. That's
okay.
the
lightning
and
strikes.
it's a fair amount more lightning than what we would typically see, I think, within a tropical system. Usually you get a little bit of rumbles of thunder and lightning here, but you don't usually have quite that much. I would attribute it to the just extreme wind that you have, and that wind whipping around and creates and generates that electrical field that you get at least some of that charge. But also something I noticed, though, James, we haven't had a lot of tornado warnings with this yet.
Right.
And I'm surprised by that so far. I think that'll change as it starts to slow down maybe, or weaken a little bit. But definitely I'm surprised that we haven't had more tornado warnings as it's moved inland, especially on the right half side of that storm. But yeah, a lot of lightning right around the eye wall. That's where you have the intense wind speed. That's where you get just that static charge that builds, and quite a bit more than I would say typically for a tropical system. And it's just trucking along. The heaviest of the rainfall has been on the west side of the storm. You see that from Panama City through Southport, Youngstown, just getting kind of lightening up the rain a little bit. They're actually about to see at least partially that eye wall crossing over, and they'll get a little bit of a break. It looks like the eye is going to head more towards Bluntstown, and then you get up towards Chattahoochee and Bainbridge, Georgia, and that's where I think this is going to head, and it's going to take time. But even though it's moving inland, it'll still be a Category 2 storm as it moves into southwest Georgia, those outer reaches, still winds of possibly even 100 miles an hour, very close to areas like Dothan, those strong wind gusts, Shorterville, Eufaula. You guys will most likely experience winds in excess of 75, 80 miles an hour easily, and we're talking trees down, And we're also going to see power outages probably for quite some time. Remember, first responders, typically their threshold is about 50 miles an hour. Once winds drop below 50 miles an hour, they can go out, and then search and rescue is going to begin, especially along the Gulf Coast. But do your best to just kind of hunker down, ride this out. If you're in the path of the storm now, obviously further inland as it goes, it'll weaken, but still even a Category 2 storm as it moves into South Georgia a little later this evening.
All right, and again, watching some more of the images coming in. Let's see here. Tell you what, let's go to WEX 05. This is some of the damage at Panama City Beach. This is the Thomas Drive community.
Yeah, Thomas Drive, that's the main strip right down there. In fact, one of my first television station that I worked at is WJHG. I'll mention them. They went off the air a little while ago. They're right off Thomas Drive.
Really? Goodness. Yeah, I was listening to them in the car when I was going up to, I spoke at East Elementary School in Cullman this morning, and again, that's pretty rough damage there. And I'm afraid this is the good side. That's the thing I want to stress. Yeah. This is not the bad side. This is the good side. So you can imagine what it's going to look like down toward the Cape San Blas, and Mexico Beach and Indian Pass. I wish we could get Ginger Z on with us. Ginger, she's able to get Twitter messages out, but again, at this point, she cannot broadcast from down there. But she gave us a message that her ability to broadcast is gone, but she is safe. So again, let's go back to put the graphics behind me here for just a second. And again, we're going to pull some more images up. Seeing a lot more damage images coming in. And remember, most of the damage images that we're going to be seeing here, this is from the good side. Let's go back and look at another image coming in off WEX 05. This is a private school, and Jeff Gammons takes this image. He believes it's called Gateway Christian Academy. And again, Charles, you might be more familiar with Panama City than I am. Sustained wind damage to the west side of the building. And again, that was taken at Panama City Beach. And again, if you missed this image earlier, this is some of the damage also coming in from Panama City Beach. And I've got a shot from the eye wall, which is pretty remarkable. The eye, how about that? This was the eye wall of Michael by Tyndall Air Force Base. Full sunshine, blue sky in the eye. And again, the folks that are there, they say it's the experience of a lifetime to see something like that. We can certainly understand that. So let's go. Tell you what, here's Mark. Our friend Mark Suddeth has got some video. Let me punch this up real quick. This is the Hampton Inn at Panama City Beach.
Oh, wow.
Again, that's looks like that might be freshwater flooding in through there.
And that's not that far from the beach. That's probably 1.5 miles to 2 miles, if I remember correctly. My goodness. Yeah, I would not say that is the storm surge by any means, but they are definitely just getting inundated with heavy, heavy rain.
And I want to show some images here. You're going to see the actual eye of this thing. This is remarkable.
Oh, wow.
This is just stunning.
How clear the eye wall is.
Right.
The eye of the storm.
You know, we launched the new GOES 16 a few years ago, and we knew that it would be good, but anyway, that was pretty remarkable. Let's go back to the graphics behind me here. If you're just joining us, we are in coverage. We are covering the arrival of Hurricane Michael. It is 1:25 on Wednesday, October 10th, 2018. I'm James Spann with Pam Huff and Charles Daniel. We'll be here through the afternoon. This is the eye of the hurricane, which is now inland. It made landfall about 30 minutes ago. It is moving along at a very good clip. The weather conditions begin to improve down here on the Gulf Coast, I'd say, in about 2 hours. It's still going to be very rough, very windy. In fact, you're looking in the other box. That is video coming from Panama City Beach. But as the eye moves away, you'll see the conditions improving down there pretty rapidly. And I would imagine we have very severe damage that is to be found east of Panama City Beach, again, down toward Cape San Blas and Indian Pass and Port St. Joe. One of the contractors that we have, Brett Adair, with his streaming company, he was down there and apparently his vehicle washed away. We believe that Brett is okay, but it's been pretty rough down through there, obviously.
We have Stephen Quinn on.
Okay, Pam, let's go to Pam. And Pam, bring in Stephen. If you will,
Yes,
please.
if you can hear me now. Yes, Stephen Quinn is in Tallahassee right now, and of course, they have not received anywhere near what we're looking at right now. But Stephen, if you will, bring us up to date. What are you experiencing right now?
Hey, Pam, just want to make sure you guys can hear me there. We're driving in toward downtown Tallahassee right now. When I can tell you what we just drove by was actually at least one stoplight that was out, which tells us that we're already starting to experience some power outages, and that is frankly what city officials in a press conference earlier today told me they are expecting. The reason, if you look at our city, you see these beautiful live oaks that are frankly a staple of this city, but also are problematic when you start feeling tropical storm and hurricane force winds, which are headed our way now. They have had power cruises when we joined you before that have been massing here, getting ready, and by tomorrow, on a normal day, Pam, they would have about 90 crews, 90 people working for their utility. Tomorrow, they expect to have about 600 coming in from as far as Nebraska and Oklahoma, trying to help get the lights back on. They say that's going to be priority number one. But for right now, there is a shelter-in-place order, meaning that if you have not found shelter, they're asking you to stay in your homes, and those shelters do exist. About 6 to 7 schools here in Leon County, which is where Tallahassee, is located, have been open. And my understanding, at last count, according to county officials we spoke to, there are about 1,500 people here in those shelters. And some of those are not just from here, but they're also from those low-lying areas to the south of us in Wakulla County, where there's a mandatory evacuation order. Keep in mind, we're about a 2-hour drive from where this hurricane has made landfall, and still there's about a 9 to 13-foot storm surge expected in those coastal areas to the south of where we are here in Tallahassee. As you see local law enforcement, they're out here right now. However, I'm being told that once these conditions start to get worse, they're going to be off the roadways, and they're telling people to do the same as we start to get our way here into downtown Tallahassee. And you can see it is fairly quiet out here right now. Florida State University, of course, and Florida A&M are here. Those schools have had classes canceled for days now in preparation for the storm making landfall. Has been told that, according to the mayor, they do believe that most people have heeded the warning, so that is a good sign. The wind has picked up here significantly in the last few minutes or so, within the last hour, really, and so that is a sign that it is starting to make its way here. But this is what it looks like here in Tallahassee as we start to get those outer bands, Pam.
And Stephen, I can't see any as you've been driving in, but I heard in a report earlier today that one of the ways that they prepared for this in Tallahassee, there's a lot of construction going on in Tallahassee right now, and they lowered all of those construction cranes that are up because they are anticipating high winds.
That is my understanding. And, there's another eerie sight, Pam, when you go along the interstate on I-10, which is, of course, the main thoroughfare through here. You're used to seeing those interstate lights. Those have all been lowered as well. I had heard that there is construction. I have not seen any, but I had heard that as well, Pam, that obviously a high crane is not somewhere you want to be in a situation like this where you are on the road, or rather in the air, in a situation where it is that windy out there. As you see, again, police and sheriff's deputies are out here. We've seen more of them than regular civilian cars, and that's certainly a good sign as we are out here. But the concern again here is going to be power outages, and to our south, it's going to be storm surge. Michael, frankly, packing a punch in many different ways here in this area of the Florida Panhandle.
Stephen Quinn, we certainly were going to keep track with you this afternoon. James, I don't know if it's possible right now for you to show us how far inland this is right now when you're looking at Tallahassee, or Charles?
Well, I can show you on the map. Let's just take it full screen. I'll show you where Tallahassee is. I'll circle Tallahassee over here. And then you've got the center of circulation about 65 miles away. So they're still getting tropical storm force winds, or they will be very soon. Remember, this is now more on a northeasterly track, and as it continues to move and make that more northeasterly turn, the wind speeds there are going to increase dramatically, I would say, over the next couple of hours. Nothing like what they've seen along the Gulf Coast for sure. For Panama City Beach, Mexico Beach, Port St. Joe, The worst of it is over, but it's going to be a gradual decline in the wind speeds. Now they've got to wait and just let these winds die down. For Youngstown and Bluntstown, as this moves over those next two areas, those next two cities, that's where we're going to see some more of the damage, especially right there, right around that eye wall.
And so again, we have Stephen Quinn in Tallahassee. We'll continue to update that. We have one of our newest family members here is Jamie Hale, and Jamie, of course, is from that area.
Right.
She has, we understand, just some incredible video and pictures, and we are going to be looking at that in just a moment, coming into her from friends who are there. So stay with us for that. That is going to be something that we're going to want to see. These people who have lived there, Charles, you've lived there, Jamie lives there. You understand how difficult it is when that surge starts to come in.
Well, the surge combined with the rainfall, I mean, and I'm not saying anything bad, but Florida is flat. There is nowhere for this water to go,
Exactly.
and it doesn't drain quickly, and it doesn't drain well because there's only, in some spots you're 15, 20 feet above sea level. That water goes down and it hits the water table, and it's got to go somewhere, so it's going to go to the lowest lying point, of course. These drainage ditches, and then it gets into the streets. And I remember being in Panama City Beach, this was a long time ago now, but it didn't take but a heavy thunderstorm to cause flooding along
then.
Thomas Drive, and that was it. You got a good soaking downpour, and the roads were 2, 3, 4 inches underwater at least, just from the heavy rain. So again, quite the different scenario with this. Of course, we're talking several feet of rain possible in a few spots. The good news is this is moving a lot faster than the storms we saw previously. It's actually starting to pick up a little bit more forward motion. I don't think it's updated on our graphics system yet, but about 15 miles an hour. That's going to increase in speed, which means it gets out of here very quickly. In fact, by tomorrow morning should be into the Carolinas, which it'll get out of here very quickly. But yeah, the flooding is going to be a huge concern. That with the storm surge along those barrier islands especially, that is just amazing. I'm willing to bet that most of those outer islands are underwater, probably almost completely around there, around Port St. Joe. And you've got a lot of, also the environmental impact. There's a lot of estuaries and sanctuaries around there that are protected, highly protected for birds and fish and wildlife, and I know those are going to be highly protected. There might be a little silver lining. I'm going to throw this out there. They've been dealing with a massive red tide down along the Gulf Coast.
Could that turn this up and get it out?
Could help get that red tide out of there. I know all through Panama City Beach, even almost to Destin, they've been dealing with a terrible, terrible red tide. So if you're going to find a silver lining in this, that might be it. It might be able to churn that water up and even just push some of that algae back out into the Gulf. So.
And one of the things that you hear about, the Gulf is so warm, and it's been warmer than normal at this time of year. And this is going to cool off the Gulf, am I correct?
Right. A lot of this, it uses up a lot of that energy, and also it causes what we call upwelling. You start to get some of that cooler water from down below kind of pulled to the surface. So that will help some with the bringing those temperatures down just a little bit. But also you got to think about, we haven't had a lot of tropical systems to come through this year so far. So the heat was allowed to build, the water temperatures were allowed to climb, and it's that warm water that also caused the red tide. Once it gets above a certain temperature, you get those problems. But now this should help with, at least with some of that, by bringing some cooler water to the surface, maybe.
You said you worked at WJHG, right?
I did.
We have just about 8 seconds of video. Watch. Jamie Hale provided this to us from her Twitter feed. Watch as the water comes in.
Man.
It's always a concern that there could be some people who had. However, we have seen some police out here as well as sheriff's deputies, although I'm told from the county officials once those conditions start to deteriorate, which is what we expect in the next hour or two, they're going to go off
We
the
were
roads.
hearing Stephen Quinn there.
That video, though, I mean, I've stood in that hallway. I know exactly where they are, and I will tell you that TV station is not that far from the coast. It's, I mean, within a mile, mile and a half from the beach. It is right there. You go straight down Thomas Drive, you run into Spinnaker, you run into La Villa, that's Span's favorite spot.
Yeah.
You know, that's where you run into those bars and those restaurants down there, and you're right there. And again, and that was on the good side of the storm. Let me put it that way. That was on the left-hand side of the storm. It's the right half that was even worse. So again, the amount of water is tremendous, and where they're located, their broadcast tower is literally in the back parking lot. And I am not surprised that didn't knock them off the air. They most likely had winds in excess of 110, 20 miles an hour.
This is Thomas Drive.
This is Thomas Drive. Okay. This is schooners. Okay, yeah. So if you've been to Panama City Beach, there's schooners right there. The beach is on your left-hand side of the screen. And you can see a few folks out there. I can't believe they're even out there right now. But again, very heavy rain. I would say probably another hour before the really terrible winds start to subside. Even though they're on the back side of the eye wall now, still some extremely, extremely heavy rainfall. Do we know the source, who this is?
It's one of the live LSM guys.
Is it our Live Storms meeting? I just want to give them credit that these guys are down there. You can see the power is out. Look at the street lights even just torn up just a bit.
But you know, Charles, if they were on the east side of the storm, that road would be underwater.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You would know the difference between the ocean and that road right now.
You would think they're probably 400 or 500 feet, maybe a little bit more than that from the ocean, from the Gulf, and. On the other side of the storm, you're talking a 6 to 10 foot, maybe 14-foot storm surge on the other side of the eye wall.
And that is Thomas Drive, right, Charles?
He made a turn. I'm not 100% sure where he is there. But yeah, he was on Thomas. I'm not sure which direction. The beach is going to be right there on your right-hand side.
And again, we want to stress, these big condominiums, they're not going to crumble here. They're intact. They built a code, and they're going to be fine. But it looks like some type of structural damage there, Charles. I can't really see what that is, and right in that camera view there. But it looks like there's been some kind of damage, and you're going to see a lot of damage. The winds probably have gusted to an excess of 100 miles an hour. But again, thankfully, we stress Panama City Beach was on the better west side of this thing without the storm surge.
It almost looks like he's kind of headed down towards like St. Andrews State Park. If he's headed that direction, with the beach on his right hand side, he's most certainly facing east or southeast, if you want to look at it where he's located right now. And again, you can still see the way the trees are blowing. But again, if he went the opposite direction, if he's facing he was near Schooners, which again, that's where he was. I think he turned left and headed towards St. Andrews State Park. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm trying to determine which hotel which condo that is there. It's been so long since I've been there. But you get down there where Thomas Drive and all that intersects, and then you start getting out, there's what is it? Pineapple Willie's is down that way.
Yeah. And again, what we're doing, we're gonna go back to a different feed in Panama City. If we don't, we're gonna go back to that feed in just a second. And people get aggravated when we take that down, so we're gonna go back to that in just a second. We have multiple feeds that we can take from down here, and what we're trying to do is show you exactly what it looks like. So again, this is coming from this is Thomas Drive.
Okay.
And Charles, you're our Thomas Drive guy.
Wow! Look right there, that entranceway there. The sign's blown over.
Right,
so he's headed.
And the beach is on the right side, right?
It looks like it, yeah. But with the way the wind is blowing, it's hard to tell. The wind there should be coming from behind him, so he should be facing almost southeast or east southeast at this point. What does that say?
That should be the beach on the right over there. Seaside
Villa. So I'm going to see if I can get that right.
And again, if you're just joining us, we're going to be here throughout the afternoon, and we're going to let you know what's happened down here. We can't answer all your questions because we don't know. Understand the conditions are still horrific down here.
Yeah.
Now it's going to improve greatly in about an hour or two, but for now, it's pretty rough. And
so to put this, he's probably, I would say, less than a mile away from the Shell Island Beach. If you guys know where that is, White Sand Beach. Shell Island, White Sand Beach down that way. And then he's, again, the Moon Spinner condominium, Patch's Pub, he's just passed that a little while ago. Yeah, you can see there the water over the road and the winds blowing.
Right, and we stress if the landfall would have been west of Panama City, that would be all water right there. That would be underwater. So we're thankful that Panama City was on the better side, but still, it's been a very rough ride. But you can see that power is out, but most of the structures seem to be intact. If you're going to be on the side of a Category 4 hurricane, you want to be on the west side. When it comes to a Gulf Coast hit like this, we've seen some damage from Brandon as he drives down that street there, Charles. And again,
okay,
it looks like he's the only guy out there, which is good. I think we hope most people heeded the warnings. Evacuations.
He's headed back. He's turned around. He's playing it smart. Yeah, he's headed back.
He's near Captain Anderson's, right?
Yeah,
now.
everybody knows where Captain Anderson's is. If you haven't been to Panama City and gone there, you haven't been to Panama City. The shrimp scampi, amazing, by the way. I'll throw that out there. But so he's kind of taking the safe way and kind of turning back around. And you can't go much further past St. Andrews State Park anyway. Is that the yard? I think that's called the boat yard. Is where he is. That's called the boat yard right there on the right.
And there's damage to that.
Right.
What is that over there? That's
where they put the boats up on the lifts, and that's a big warehouse, dry dock, and notice it's ripped the cover off. And again, there's a restaurant there. It's called the Boat Yard. You've probably seen the commercials for that if you've been down there, but you can see there they've ripped off the siding and the roof. Amazingly enough, the boats are still standing, at least in some spots. It looks like this front end towards us has been demolished, certainly. But overall, I think it could have been much, much worse, like you were saying, James, had this been on the other side of that storm. So what we're seeing here on the, if you want to call it good side of the storm, imagine the other side, the other half of the storm down towards Mexico Beach, Port St. Joe, and those areas. Please just keep those folks in your thoughts as this goes on. Yeah, that's called the Boat Yard right there. I know exactly where he is. And you can see the sidings ripped off. That whole side of that structure looks like it's been collapsed at this point. Man, I wish we could get some sound from him. That might be dangerous, but...
Yeah, we'll just kind of leave it at this. But again, we're all watching this together.
Yeah.
For those of you watching online or at home.
Yeah, look at that. That whole side is collapsed. That's a lot of boats in there. My goodness. But again, this is one of our Live Storms media partners. We partner up with them. These guys are storm chasers. We had some video from Brett Adair. He's a local Alabamian here. You've seen his stuff on the air a lot. He's a good storm chaser, and his vehicle got washed away. He was down in Mexico Beach. His vehicle got washed away. They had to jump out and take shelter. And he drives a big SUV for a storm chase vehicle. So you imagine a big Tahoe or Suburban. I forget what he has now, but to the amount of water to pick it up in the video that we saw earlier, it was literally just floating away and underwater. And we're talking 6 to 10 foot storm surge, up to 15 feet in some spots. That is not including the amount of rainfall that we're going to see. That is just the immediate Gulf Coast and storm surge there. But again, you can see he's kind of taking shelter. It actually looks a little bit better where he is. He's actually blocked the wind coming in from the side. He's using those buildings to block some of that wind from his current position right now. But you see the trees in the foreground. Go ahead. I was
going to say, while we're watching this, people are asking about the impact in Alabama. And again, we stress, if you're just joining us, for the northern half of Alabama, we don't expect any problems tonight with wind. The peak winds will be under 20 miles an hour for just about all communities. So there's no need to cancel anything. There's no, just going about your business. What is that blowing out there in front of the road there? Let's take that full screen again. What is that? Goodness. Some kind of sheet metal?
I think that's siding from the boat yard, from the from that warehouse there. I'm sorry, the producer will have to tell me that again. I apologize. Okay. But notice that, yeah, that's the siding and the roof. Look at that. Oh, wow.
Again, I don't have any specific wind peaks that were measured. In Panama City, but I would imagine, Charles, they had a gust of at least 100, I would imagine.
Yeah, I want to say, I think Tyndall, I saw something come across. It was
and
even
Tyndall was
above that.
120 down at the Air Force Base.
Yeah, it was
They had
like
120 something.
Yeah. But Panama City, no doubt, just getting hammered and as well in the heavy rain. All right. As soon as you have that, as soon as you guys have that, let us know. They're working on some video from the other side of the storm. Again, that would be the more intense side of the storm. The main graphic system here. You can see the eye has made its landfall, moving inland. Areas like Youngstown and Bluntstown about to see the most extreme part of what's left of this storm. It is starting to weaken some, but it is going to be a slow process. As a matter of fact, let's see if any update. Still, the latest update still has 155. We know that's a few hours old. As this moves inland, though, it'll still be a Category 2 storm as it moves into Georgia. It'll be clipping parts of southwestern or southeastern parts of the state of Alabama. We do have that video.
Let's take that video full screen.
Yeah.
Mexico Beach, Florida.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we've seen this one. That's been floating around the Twitter. This apparently is a reporter from Tampa, from WFLA Channel 8. And again, he says this is from apparently one of his viewers or somebody, but we believe that to be valid. We believe that is credible. A lot of times during these events, you see images that are old or videos that are old or people trying to, pull your chain here. We believe that is credible. And again, that is Mexico Beach, and that's the bad side.
Right. That and that's storm surge pushing debris, what he says, washing up to the other properties. So that's debris in the water being pushed up and blown up against other homes. So I don't know how close he was to the beach itself, but my goodness, tremendous damage along the eastern half of this storm down towards Mexico Beach. Wow.
All right, and again, we'll go back to the live stream coming from Panama City. Just joining us, we are on ABC 3340. We are at 1:48 Central Time on Wednesday, October 10th. We're covering the arrival of Hurricane Michael, historic. It is the second strongest hurricane to strike the Gulf Coast in the United States on record. Going back to the late 1800s, the strongest was Hurricane Camille in August of 1969. It passed Christian, Mississippi. Catastrophic damage. That was a Category 5. This was an upper end 4, almost at that 5 level. And I'm afraid we're going to see some damage much like Camille down toward Port St. Joe, the Cape. I'm afraid the Cape's underwater, Cape San Blas. Then down to Indian Pass, and then back over toward Apalachicola. We do not have a lot of images out of there because obviously communications probably are basically non-existent, and that's the way it works with these large hurricanes like that. Let's take a look at some more images coming in from social media. This is going to be a roof that was taken off in Panama City. This is coming from our sister station up in Nashville, WZTV. And again, this is the good side. There it goes. This is not the bad side. This is the good side. We use that term relatively speaking, of course. And also, as we look at this stuff, Charles, people asking about, they're just joining us. Alabama coast is fine. There's some high water around, but they've not had any rain today. Hardly any rain at Gulf Shores. I mean, they've had barely enough rain to measure. Pensacola is fine. Navarre Beach is fine. They've had some wind and some rain. And again, you get down toward Destin, they've had some issues, but again, the problem has been from Panama City Beach, east and southeast, down the coast, down toward Apalachicola, Port St. Joe. So let's go back to the radar behind me. And again, if the northern half of the state tonight, there's no need to cancel anything. Everything's fine. The wind won't be bad. We'll just have some light rain. No problems. In terms of the main effect in the state, that's going to be the southeastern corner of the state. Places like Dothan, Ozark, Abbeville, Geneva. There could be some pretty good wind gusts there, but the core of this thing more than likely will be passing east of Alabama. This is Dothan right here. This is Houston County. This is Geneva County. Chattahoochee River is right here. That's the Alabama-Florida state line. You can see that Michael will likely just miss Alabama to the south and east. But still, we're going to have very windy, very wet conditions down here in southeast Alabama. Technically, there is a hurricane warning in effect for that part of the state where they might see winds of 50, 60 miles an hour. Tropical storm warning up to Greenville, Luverne, Troy, Union Springs, Phoenix City, and Eufaula. They might see winds of 40, 45 miles an hour. There's a new tornado watch, by the way. This is in effect until 2 a.m. Eastern time for much of central and south Georgia. This does not include immediate Atlanta, just the areas to the south, but much of central south Georgia, Macon, Dublin, Augusta, Tifton, Valdosta, Bainbridge, all these areas with the possibility of tornadoes. But again, Charles, we have really not seen any tornado problems so far.
I haven't seen a tornado warning anywhere close by. It looks like there's ones over there just southwest of Jacksonville, but really no major tornado warnings close to the center of the storm, which has been amazing.
This is Front Beach Road in Panama City Beach. You've been, again, Charles, you're a PCB guy here.
I was hoping we could get Jamie in here if she was here. She's from there, she's lived there, and she could give us some more perspective. So, but she's going to be calling in from a little bit. But you see Front Beach Road. Of course, this is where you're going to go down there. And this is different. If you haven't been to Panama City Beach since like the late 90s, they have completely redone it. It's been redone. And building codes after, I want to say, Ivan, were dramatically strengthened. So a lot of the newer buildings are much, much stronger than what they were. But you can still see the amount of damage that we're seeing. You got the billboard that's ripped down there. And just the amount of water on the road. It's not terribly bad here, but they have been on the side of the storm that's been getting just tons and tons of rainfall. And I'm surprised that we don't see a little bit more. It looks like, can't tell if that's a power pole. What is that? Or if it's just a snapped part of a sign or something right there. Maybe a ride. That's what that is. So it's a ride that's been kind of blown sideways a little bit.
And again, we're watching, for those that are just joining us, we're watching this live together. This is not video that's been shot earlier today. This is live from our partners with LSM, live streaming media, and they are in multiple places in the path of this. And there is obviously great interest in all of these locations on the Gulf Coast, and we'll try and answer all of your questions as they come in today. But the best thing to do is for us to just watch this together. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Instead of describing it, you can watch that. We're watching it all at the same time. The good thing, we're not seeing anybody else out there. I think most people are hunkered down, as the term goes. We've heard of no injuries or fatalities, Charles. I want to stress that, to my knowledge.
That we know of, right.
Right. Now, there's a lot we don't know. Understand, on the bad side, from Tyndall, the Air Force Base, down through Mexico Beach, Cape San Blas, Port St. Joe, Apalachicola, we just don't have a lot of reports out of there because communications are probably very sketchy. These cell networks are marvelous, just incredible how you can pick up your phone and talk with anybody in the world, but cell networks can go down. They often do during a situation like this. And again, we've not really had that many reports coming out of that area east of the landfall point.
Yeah, it's coming up. This is that, if he's on Front Beach, that's that famous 30A. You see everybody wants to go down and visit 30A.
There's
that's
the tree
it right there, and you can see the tree in the distance.
And this is near the TV station, right, Charles?
Yeah, it looks like he's getting close.
I say this is WJHG Channel 7 in Panama City Beach. In fact, we got a Panama City Beach guy in here right now.
If he's getting close, if he's on, you said he's on Front Beach. Is that where he is now? All right, so he's pretty close then. Yeah, I know exactly where he is. Yep.
Getting a lot of notes that the winds have started to really increase in Dothan, down in southeast Alabama. Dothan, that's where the main impact will be in our state. The winds there could gust up to 60 miles an hour. This, by the way, is Gary Smith from Live Storms Media. LSM Smith, I'm sorry, our partners that are helping to provide live feeds from down south. And we are going to go to Dothan, down to Houston County here shortly. We have Alex Durrence, one of our reporters down in Houston County, and they're going to be giving a briefing here shortly for those with interests down in southeast Alabama and the Wiregrass. But again, the conditions are improving. The worst of the weather is over at Panama City. Now, it's still not very pleasant, but it's not as bad as it was, say, 1 hour ago. And again, you can see that the weather will greatly improve. The rain rates will decrease over the next hour or so, and they will be in bright sunshine tomorrow. It's going to be a beautiful sunny day all up and down the Gulf Coast tomorrow. If you're planning to go to the National Shrimp Festival, go. There was no issues in Gulf Shores. In fact, there's barely rain in Gulf Shores today. They're going to have a beautiful, beautiful weekend for the big event there. But the ice staying intact, it's pretty remarkable for this thing that the structure is still amazingly intact for being so far inland. There's a lot of marshland down in through there, and that might contribute to that eye staying intact. But that's coming up toward Interstate 10. The eye wall is near Interstate 10, pretty close to Marianna, Florida, which is down to the south of Dothan. And again, on that northeast trajectory, that will mean the eye will be crossing Interstate 10 near Marianna and then passing just south and east of the city of Dothan. Let's go to Houston County for a news conference down in Dothan right now.